I don't think we respect our emotions enough. A lot of the time, what we will do when we have something that irritates us is we will immediately disqualify ourselves from being able to work through whatever's in front of us by saying something like, I don't even know why I'm so upset by this, or this really shouldn't annoy me as much as it does. And while that may be true, when we approach our discontents by immediately disqualifying our right to be upset, we don't give ourselves any ground to actually work from. And this is not to say that what you should do every single time you feel something is listen to it and abide by its principles, because a lot of the time, things that come into our head are just random, irrational sensations that might come from something as simple as a poor night's sleep. You don't need to listen to everything that comes into your mind, but equally well, if for whatever reason you are feeling discontent, you shouldn't just ignore that. If it has upset you, then the first thing you need to do is actually recognize that you're upset. From there, then you can start unpicking what it is you actually need to do about that, how much you need to listen to that. It's important that we don't add pain to our pain. It's already hard enough if you're struggling with something to deal with that issue itself. And if you add on top of that this feeling of guilt or regret or just general weakness within yourself by feeling like you shouldn't be upset by this, it doesn't actually give you any grounds to really work from. That just makes it harder for you to address the issue that is in front of you that could quite possibly actually be something that you shouldn't be so upset about, but you just need to work through healthily. You don't need to justify your pain before you're allowed to deal with it. You don't have to find something that is ultimately catastrophic in order for you to be allowed to be upset by something. Sometimes we just get rubbed up the wrong way by something, or there's something within us that's not quite as it should be that needs to be investigated. If your knee suddenly started really hurting, you wouldn't look down at it, scream at it, and say, why is it that you're hurting as much as you are? And then continue to lambast it for days on end, hoping that it would get better. You would medicate it, you might rest it, you might exercise it, but you would do something that you would consider to be productive and in the intention of making that thing better. You wouldn't add more hurt to it, add more difficulty to it, and expect it to get better. And strangely enough, with the mind, we do this all the time. We always feel as though we are in some right to just push ourselves harder in order to get through things. As much as we don't want to kneel to our emotions all the time, there are points when we need to be tender with ourselves and just accept that we are allowed to be upset about things, even if they don't make sense. Emotions should be treated like information. And that's not necessarily to say that they should be treated like facts, but they should be treated like something that we pay attention to. If there is a feeling or a sensation in your world that is negative, even if it doesn't make sense, it should be respected. Because if you try and push that down and pretend like it's not there or pretend like you shouldn't feel this way, then you're not actually addressing the issue. You're just going over the top of it, pretending like it's not there and hoping that it will go away. And emotions have a wonderful, wicked sometimes way of pushing up even harder, even faster, and even more painfully when we push them down. It's important that you respect your feelings. And if there's something going on in your head that's not right, then there's quite often something you can do about that. But you're not going to be able to actually take those steps if you don't feel warranted to take them. You need to appreciate that even if something might not make sense in your head, or maybe you shouldn't be so upset by something that happened, you not allowing yourself to work through that is not the answer. You need to give yourself the license to address the issue, even if it is ultimately a small one. If the smoke alarm was going off in your house, it could be for one of two reasons. You could actually have a fire going on in your house that you need to tend to, or the toaster might have just popped. But either way, you wouldn't, before understanding what has gone on, go to the smoke alarm, scream at it for saying, why are you going off, and then rip it off the wall. You would first of all identify what it is that has set the alarm off, and even if it is just the toaster and there's nothing to worry about, you wouldn't proceed to then lambast the smoke alarm and say, why is it that you went off for something that didn't matter? You would address the issue and you would work from there. And our emotions are no different in this situation. Even if it is something that shouldn't actually be of great concern to you, if it has triggered the alarms in your mind, then that is worth paying attention to, and that is information that you should not neglect. There's an important distinction between surrendering to your emotions and accepting them. If you surrender to your feelings every time something comes into your mind, then you will reliably just retreat from the outside world and you won't work through issues. But in order to actually work through your problems, you have to accept that they're there. You have to first accept this is something that's irritating me, or this is something that's upset me, and as such, I need to do something about that. There's a fine difference between accepting a feeling so that you can work through it and surrendering to it and letting it control you. And it's important that we do accept the way that we feel so that we can actually do what we need to do in order to get past negative feelings. Self-compassion has practical utility, and when you actually incorporate into your routine and into the way that you deal with yourself an ability to just understand yourself, that's far more useful than just shunning your emotions and saying, I shouldn't be upset by this. And this perspective helps you actually understand what is going on. It puts you into perspective. When you can look at your feelings objectively and go, I'm upset, why am I upset? And you enable yourself the ability to actually work through that calculation, you can then come to a conclusion that gives you the relief you're after. If you learn to understand yourself in a way where whenever anything happens, you give yourself the license to work through that issue, that is surely a more resilient perspective than just putting the shutters up and inhibiting your ability to do anything but say, I shouldn't be upset by this, so I'm not going to be. That's not the way it works. And if you put that friction against yourself and make your body feel like it has to do that, it's probably just going to fight back even more. Whereas if conversely, you incorporate compassion, some care for yourself, and just some understanding of your own nuances, then you're going to be far more likely to actually successfully work through the challenges that you will face in your life. Next time you're upset about something, just keep this in mind. You could be overreacting. You could be drawing on an anxious mechanism that has worked for you before. You could genuinely have something to be upset about. But either way, you deserve to be able to work out what is going on in front of you without guilt tripping yourself for what you're feeling. You don't need to validate your emotions before you're allowed to work through them. And if you pretend like something doesn't upset you, or you tell yourself that it shouldn't upset you, that doesn't actually give you the grounds to work through the problem in front of you. So with that being said, I hope that this video lands, and I hope that you understand from here that you're allowed to be upset about things. Sometimes they'll be irrational, sometimes they won't make sense, sometimes there'll be genuine things you have to work through, but irrespective of what's going on there, you're allowed to be upset about things. You don't have to be controlled by them, but you should be able to work through that in a way that doesn't involve you giving yourself even more of a hard time than you're currently having. See you in a bit.